Welcome to She Blaze, where we're bringing you cannabis culture from a woman's point of view. And as always, here to elevate the cannabis industry. I'm one of your hosts, Ice Dawson, Cannabis Socialite.
And I am Dasheeda Dawson, the WeedHead. Hey, sis.
Hey, sis. On today's episode of She Blaze, Detroit puts a pause on their licensing process. The FBI takes baby steps in its hiring policies. And we're giving real talk to the Olympic stance on cannabis.
Woo woo. Well, of course, this has been an amazing and busy week. I want to kick things off with the high of the week. And my high of the week is Legit Trappin, which I have been doing. It's a Black-owned apparel brand. Shout out to Portia Mittens, who is a Black woman. She's actually one of the only Black license holders in the state of Oregon, also based in Illinois, and she is Legit Trappin. This sweatshirt is $60. You can find it at legittrappin.bigcartel.com. This is actually one of my favorite colors. It's embroidered, y'all, and of course, I love what is the message. Shout out to Portia.
Oh my God. Well, I love that. That's so cute. That's how I definitely feel working in the cannabis industry. Okay. And that's what everybody assumed anyway. So might as well rep it. You feel me?
1000%.
Okay. Well, happy 7/10, everybody. Woo! Take a dab, take a hit on your vape, put a little snake in the grass, add some crumble to your blunt, because it is 7/10. And this is the oils day. It's actually new in the cannabis culture within the last 10 years, honestly, of celebrating 7/10. It's also my Aunt Latifah's birthday, who is like a concentrate queen.
I know we should have had her as a guest, but you know, it's birthday time.
Yes, it's birthday time. And yeah, we sometimes come out early on the West Coast because she showed us the beauty of the West Coast with the concentrates and all the great cannabis products you can get with the real market. And my high of the week is actually happy 7/10 and Jack Herrera. So you guys, I may seem really hype and energetic because I am smoking on that Jack. Okay. And this has terpinolene, earthy flavor, has a lot of there's another pinene smell to it as well, and I super love it. Keeps me energetic. One of our sativa diva faves as we move out of the transition of the sativa categories, but it is definitely wonderful for someone that has a lot of work to do, and you know we do, and we have to start getting into the hottest topics in the cannabis industry.
Yes, okay, work to do. Jack Herrera is a favorite. Love it. Let's kick things off. What's the first hot topic?
Yes. Okay. So we are going to Detroit, Michigan, y'all. So this is heating up the cannabis streets. And it is heating up because for us, we talk a lot about equity day one. It needs to be written into the policy. It needs to be written into how you are awarding licenses to businesses. And we talk about it all the time. So this hit the press, and it's basically saying that a U.S. district judge issued a block on Detroit from issuing adult use licenses because they found that their equity program is unconstitutional. He said may be unconstitutional. You know what I'm saying? So he doesn't know fully, but until he knows, he wants them to stop issuing the little bit of licenses they already got.
Yeah, this has been on my mind, and I have been talking about it since doing my Flower to the People segment on the Larry Daniel Favors show every Thursday at 11:15 a.m. on Sirius. But basically, this is something that shows just how difficult it will be, and it has been, for Black and brown people to receive any of the benefits or really get into the cannabis space. Most people know that Detroit has historically been a Black city. By that, I mean 90% plus. And so the Detroit Legacy Clause in its equity program is really important because it essentially does provide some privileged or some precedent that allows people who have been legacy to Detroit, meaning having lived there for the last 15 of 30 years, the ability to get into the industry as well as have equity licensing priority. Well, I think it is actually all over the country that place-based prioritization has been used, right? Where people live, which communities have been most over policed. And so this is the first time to see a judge say that place-based prioritization for a municipality, a city, to say, hey, they can't prioritize their own city, that would probably be unconstitutional. It seems bogus. It seems bogus because we know that that city is a Black city. So it's the first time that place-based language actually does do the job of some of the racially biased, disproportionate outcomes of cannabis criminalization, of reversing that.
Yes, and you hit that right on the head, because honestly, it is a Black city. And so we did a little bit of investigation on who is allegedly suing Detroit, Michigan for their licensing program. Now, right now, they have about 75 licenses that they could award, right? And they've received 400 applications that fit into the criteria. And so this is really, well, they have more applications than licenses to give out. So it's already creating like a harsh competition. And the person that allegedly is suing the city, it seems like she is a woman of color.
It does? I don't know. We're not sure, but Miss Crystal Lowe, we calling you out because she's slowing things down. But this is a woman who would not necessarily fit the criteria of the 15 years of the last 30. She's lived in Detroit the last 11. In truth, when we know about the 50-year war on drugs, it is the previous 40 that have been the harshest. So I would say that she definitely came to Detroit right as it was started to reduce itself, and right around the time that Michigan opened up a medical market. Because, by the way, Michigan opened its adult use market with 300,000 plus patients in a medical market. And Detroit is changing. Detroit is being sold real estate for pennies on the dollar. And we're seeing the sort of lightening of Detroit, if you will, by that, the ownership. But I would say, honestly, after my digging, I couldn't tell whether Crystal Lowe was a person of color or not. I know there's a woman who lives in Detroit who feels she is being discriminated against unfairly because she is not going to qualify for the equity licensing.
She does feel like she is not going to qualify. The reason why I said that is because I have been looking crazy through LinkedIn, and the majority of the crystals are brown. There are some others, don't get it twisted, but a lot of the ones in that area, because I started doing my search through the cities, are brown or ethnically looking.
Gotcha. Well, you know what? I think that definitely does start to create this question about, are our goals with equity racial only? Are they location and place-based only? And I would argue they are not. I would argue that we know that is all encompassing of, just all of these things and these elements, but we have yet to really call out race-based language, except for a few states. Massachusetts is one of the criteria. New York just passed with some of that criteria in terms of minorities. The bill in Oregon that did not pass, House Bill 3112, called out Black, Indigenous, and Latinx specifically based on the data. And so if this person is falling into that category, I do feel the desire for it to be looked at, but not for the purpose of slowing down the entire process. I would also argue Detroit need to look at these licensing caps, right? We're starting with 75. Maybe it's not a true cap, but if you receive 400 applications that qualify for only 75 slots, we're, like you said, already creating a fiercely competitive situation that would cause more lawsuits to ensue and be more similar to what's happened in Chicago.
Yes, or New Jersey. I mean, we can name a number of states and cities
Illinois
that have,
Chicago.
Right. We can name a number of states, cities, anything that have now been sued because they playing with cannabis, because this is a business, okay? And ain't nobody putting up all this money and not to get any awards and not to be able to participate within the business, really. So, that's how I feel real strongly about these caps, child.
No, the caps are actually historically the biggest barrier to equity. Shout out to Oklahoma, that is still riding high, literally just with a medical program. Now nearly 400,000 patients, 10% of their 4 million population, and over 9,000 licenses, of which about 6,000 are cultivation licenses. So if you want genetics, honey, if you want diversity in genetics, you might want to go to Oklahoma.
Okay, Oklahoma for real. That is how you make a fair, a really capitalist market, free market, to allow everyone to play within that system and to allow business to really create the industry itself. Free business, a free market business, versus like these false competitions, right? Because why are there 75 license caps?
You know what? Economists like to predict, or think they can predict, what's going to happen with cannabis. But it first starts with recognizing that the legacy market is an economy of supply and demand. It means something to the market, and where it is when a market is starting is important to take into account. This assumption that just because we make weed legal, the masses are going to come. Let's be clear. Folks trust the plug more than they trust these legal markets. And so as a result, we're not seeing that transition. And I am, concerned because Michigan still has a thriving legacy market. Detroit does. And what's sad is like some stuff is still coming from freaking California. And I'm like, y'all cultivating in Michigan. You got cultivation in Michigan that you can take advantage of, but it's not being done because, again, there isn't a trust that the markets are really opening up with the desire to transfer that business from the legacy to the legal.
I know that's right. And if y'all want to hear a story about my Detroit experience out there in their cannabis legacy, hit my line about it, because I got a lot to say. And with that being said, we still got a lot to say about other hot topics. And let's move on to hot topic number 2, where we really need the people to come out and represent. We love being active in the legislative process. We love being active in the regulatory process. We love being active because the government works for us. And some of the ways the government works for us is they ask for public comment. And the Office of National Drug Control Policy basically announced that it has a 30-day public comment period. Okay, get this, on basically how have communities been affected by the war on drugs, and what are some systematic barriers to opportunities for underdeserved communities.
Okay, so there's a couple things that I want to correct. It's systemic and underserved, and I would say historically excluded. So we starting to change the lexicon on a lot of things. Underserved acts like, I don't know, like, there was an unintentionality, but no, it was intentional. These communities were historically excluded from most of the policies. Let's talk a little bit about, folks coming back from military stints and expecting to get GI Bills, and, those were not allowed and afforded to Black vets. That was something that was a common practice, in fact. And so historically excluded through government sanctioned things. And so now the National Drug Control Policy Office is asking what I consider to be a water is wet type kind of question. Like, we know this has happened because ACLU and DPA has provided years and years and years of data. Even the 2020 report that ACLU published, A Tale of Two Countries, is enough for the National Drug Control Policy to say, yep, we definitely have these systemic barriers that have been impacting historically excluded communities like Black, Indigenous, and Latinx communities. But in true government form, we have to, of course, have a bureaucratic process. This is their process they are kicking off. But I know you have the TTT, but to me, let's be clear. They're not doing this because they want to. They're doing this because they have to. Right? They're doing this because of an executive order that was signed by Biden, and now they have to examine this. But that is not the choice of the office, which tells you a little bit of the spirit of the office, in my opinion.
Right. And you're right. This is the executive order, but I do think that this is the way to read people for filth. You know what I'm saying? That lady that went viral a couple months ago, reading the police department for what they've been doing, that is what they need right now. We could have these dumb moments with the ACLU, but this is an opportunity for you to really dig your heels in and let them know directly what has happened to you. People that are adjacent to you but still in your circle, like, read these people. This is the time. And so the office asks for a series of different questions. How might research examine equity in the context of law enforcement actions against drug trafficking and transnational criminal organization? Which I do think is like, okay, what in the, like, fake news is this? But that is besides the point. But I do think this opportunity to show that there had never been equity actually placed in any of the offices, and drugs is how they really started the harm in our neighborhoods. And they ask other questions on how to involve people who use drugs, especially not in the typical household. Okay, so they're asking how should they change this policy on maybe the three strikes you're out kind of thing. So I do feel this is an opportunity to let them know what's happening. And this ends August 6th, so you guys got some time to really put your pen on paper. I have seen some of these comments, and they are going in, and they have to, put this throughout their office as a memo and review things. So this is the time to bring in some of this critical race issues that we go through in America.
1000%. And again, this isn't a spoken testimony. They're requesting written comment. And so again, you could do something simply by submitting an ACLU report that you maybe leverage or use. But I am also calling to the table our historically Black and Indigenous and Latinx organizational groups that have been involved in social justice for years. These are the groups that have taken forever to start talking about the connection between cannabis criminalization and social justice. Thank you and welcome to the party. But this year, after New York and New Jersey legalized, we started seeing a lot more involvement. They definitely protested the commissioner structure in New Jersey. You're seeing some involvement in their voice on who should be selected to run the New York market. And so this is that time to also put your pen to paper, put something on your letterhead and submit it to this National Drug Control Policy Office. There's so many places. I know for us, we, all of our organizations that we are part of will be participating in, leading the charge on reading them for filth, if you will, because while I think this is a water is wet moment, we will absolutely utilize the moment. They've given us 30 days to make public comment, to show what is the challenge. I would say the very first challenge is their policy on cannabis. So why should we focus only on cannabis when it's the entire drug control policy? Well, because cannabis represents 40% of the drug offenses and arrests in the United States. And of those offenses and arrests, nearly 90% are possession alone. So we're talking about criminalizing user. And we know that there's an overall movement to decriminalize drugs in general, but as we know that the government understands fully that cannabis is medicine, it's even more egregious that cannabis represents such a large percentage of all of the arrests in this country. So they need to stop that policy right now. And that in itself would be some of the things that remove systemic barriers that have been creating issues for historically excluded communities like ours, for example. And so I'm passionate about it. I wish I could come to the mic. I would be like, I would literally spit bars on them.
Right. Have a whole poem.
A whole poem. But it's all good. I basically know that at the end of the day, I can also write these things out. I have plenty of receipts to gather together. And I'm just encouraging everybody to gather your receipts and put them on blast, because they're acting like they don't know, because that's the bureaucratic way, but they do know. And we want to make sure that we give them as many references as possible so that it is clear and it isn't confusing.
Exactly. So please get involved in the process, you guys. Okay. And there are different ways that different branches of the government and departments of the government can change their stance on cannabis. And so we have in our hot topic number 3, the FBI secretly changing its hiring policies on cannabis. But they are like the worst changes in the man-made history. This is more water is wet than ever before, because basically, previously to these changes, the FBI would not hire anyone that has used cannabis within 3 years. And a decade ago, it was 10 years. And then before, it was like not at all ever in life. Like, you better not have ever sniffed marijuana. So this is the history of the FBI and how they hire their, white bread agents. And so basically, they decided, because there's all this internal thought in the agency around CBD, and people are interested, and they have to now look at all these new regulations and policies and, trans state commerce around CBD. Everyone's all into it. They want to know about the products derived from hemp and why do people love it. So the FBI felt like, hey, we're going to have it so that you couldn't have used marijuana within 1 year of applying to the FBI in order to get hired. Maybe they need more agents too. That might be the thing.
They probably do. Real talk. I mean, I ain't gonna front like I haven't had my experiences with the FBI. Out of Princeton with a molecular biology degree, they were a heavy recruiter for the sciences and engineering and technology disciplines out of Princeton. I went to maybe 2 interviews, and then once it started going into like the last 10 years of your life, and by that point, real talk, I hadn't consumed cannabis like for real, for real. I mean, I maybe had a hit one time, I don't know, but it wasn't the way I am now. I was absolutely an athlete, and I just stayed away from it. So I definitely would have fit the criteria. It just was too much prying into my family's history, and I didn't appreciate that necessarily. So they missed out. But that being said, I'm glad to see that there at least some learning. But to your point, this is a water is wet. You are still doing what we call canna bigotry. You're basically still holding people to these standards of, again, a 50-year-long failed war on drugs. Literally, June 17th was the anniversary of 50 years of Nixon coming to the a White House press conference to say, hey, we waging a war, and we're not going to do it here. We're going to do it everywhere. But this has been, leading into the reason why the FBI, and not just the FBI, Biden administration firing mofos for basically their consumption. This is why the federal government still is tiptoeing around usage. Meanwhile, what they're not recognizing is, boom, folks been using. And now with, like you said, hemp-derived products, it is the case that people are using legally created products, and it is still cannabis. It still has THC in it in full spectrum. And in some cases now we have this whole Delta 8 situation, and folks are absolutely starting to get around that corner of the Delta 9 testing because it's a different molecule. So, I think it's just one of those things where I'm kind of happy we're making baby steps, but this is kind of like, and we're about to get into it with the baby steps the Olympics did with some of their THC policies, is not enough. Who you playing with is like kind of the thing. You don't want the best and the brightest, because the people that we're training to be the next cannabis pioneers and the next generation, they are the best and the brightest. They represent excellence. And guess what? They know cannabis is medicine. Excellence represents knowing the endocannabinoid system. Okay. So that's to me what they're missing out on.
Yes, and I'm glad that you said that thing about the Delta 8 molecule versus the Delta 9 and the CBD, because also what we've been hearing a lot of in other departments is, oh, they're not testing for CBD. And there's a part of me that's like, okay, you guys, do y'all know what they're actually testing for? And do you know how the drug testing is supposed to do? Because it's like CBD is like a molecule. And like, if you're using cannabis and they have a THC one, using CBD should not highlight your actual drug test to show you use THC. If it has the right drug test, that doesn't do it, right? So there's a part where they're now doing these policies and they're confusing people in these departments. They're creating these policies, they're moving baby steps towards it, and they're confusing, CBD from the Delta 8 from the Delta 9.
Gotcha. I mean, I think there is no confusion molecularly. They look different and they would separate differently and they would be tested differently. Most drug tests are Delta 9 THC. But if you are using a full spectrum hemp derived, mostly CBD product, it still has up to 0.3% THC. If you use it like I use it, where we're talking about everyday usage and everyday consistently relatively large, over time, I'm building up THC in my system too, probably enough to overshoot or come up positive for very low threshold. We talk about nanograms per milliliter thresholds when I'm taking, a nanogram and I'm actually doing a milligram, right, of usage. It becomes some of the things that you can actually test positive. Now, if you're doing CBD isolates, then yeah, no, you shouldn't have any THC in those products and you shouldn't test positive. If you're doing CBD isolate that has been created into Delta 8, which is how most of the Delta 8 products are, then of course there's a chance that you may, because there's still more, what I would say, they look more like Delta 8 and Delta 9. There's a potential, but it's still less likely because a double bond is a very big difference in a molecule, and that's what the difference is. And again, I'm a molecular biologist, and sometimes I'm still confused. And so I know that the average layperson is not paying attention or knowing enough. And I think the FBI is, one, banking on that, and then they're creating baby steps to move forward. So they just want to still perpetuate the fear of usage. I personally think if you're an FBI agent right about now, dealing with some of the things that we're dealing with, you probably need to be utilizing cannabis, if you ask me, for your own health and well-being. So good luck to the people that are, in pursuit. And those are probably the same rules people. And with that being said, like, I'm ready to get into what we got to talk about with this Olympics, because to me this is all connected with the ridiculousness of our U.S. policies and how we've infected the rest of the world with these really, really janky policies.
Yes. So let's get into our main topic, because I do have a lot to say, because these different departments are the ones we're asking Congress, hey, legalize this, put it in law, let the president sign off, and we're going to put it in these offices to be regulated. And these MFers don't really know what they're doing. So I'm ready to get into the main topic, which is the Olympic Committee is moving backwards on the marijuana use. Like, it really literally does not want this smoke, though. They really do.
They literally don't want the smoke. So all of this is really a result of what has transpired in the last week or so. The Friday before last, we find out that Sha'Carri Richardson has, tested positive for THC, and as a result, her trial races in the 100 meter, they basically do not count. They're no longer a win. The times are no longer clocked into world records and Olympic records and the like. And she is really lost all of the accolades that happen as a result. Woo, honey, the cannabis community is not here for it. And I don't think that I'm going to lay down the mantle. As a former D1 athlete, I understand what we are giving up as athletes just to train in this way, what we are risking. I had arthritis by the time I was 19 years old. And now that I'm living with it for 20 plus years, I recognize what type of damage I did to my body. And I wish I understood cannabinoid science when I was younger. I wish I was taught it, and I wish I was afforded it as a way to heal. And I'm talking about physiologically healed. But when we talk about Sha'Carri, we start talking about mental healing as well. And I think that there's a lot to unpack, and I'm ready to talk about it, because I do feel like it's a miscarriage of justice, and we need to hold folks accountable.
Absolutely. And they sneaky little dogs did it right before a holiday weekend, thinking, oh, okay, well, it's going to fly by everybody's head. And it did not. Like, it did not fly by anybody's head. And ultimately, I know we're seeing a lot of jokes saying, oh, if you smoke weed and you run the fastest, this, and that. But she's saying that, she allegedly ate an edible, okay, in Oregon, which is an adult use state. She is adult. She's 21, and she Or I don't know if she's 21. Let me
She
not
is
quote
21.
that. Okay. I'm like, wait, hold on. Black women. They
She do
they
look
can be
like a
whatever.
baby, but she is 21.
Right. They can be whatever age they want to be, child. And she ate an edible after finding out that her biological mother passed away by a TV reporter. Like, let's get into the mental tea of sports and being a professional athlete. A stranger tells you your bio mom died after you just did like some amazing thing, and then you're expected to keep calm. Like, that is definitely traumatic when you get off stage. And she was there's a whole bunch of gossip that's saying that allegedly it was her girlfriend that was training with her, whatever has it. She took the edible and then immediately had to do another. First of all, how many times do they test these people is the question, but immediately had to do another drug test, which talk about the Delta 9 drug test, and it disqualified her. And she had to face a 1 month suspension because of it, and she was unable to compete in the Olympic track and field.
Yeah, and I think there's even more tea. So you hit the nail on the head on some of the details. The first being is they're in Oregon. So they have been in Oregon for months. Even though we didn't start hearing about the Olympic trials until June when they started doing media and marketing around it, the athletes have been there probably since about March, training and in facilities there. I believe all coaches, officials, and athletes, there's a good percentage of them, because it is legal, I believe they were participating themselves. And so that's when I come down to how arbitrary the rules are applied. Rules are rules until they are changed, especially unjust rules. And so that's where my mentality went. She shouldn't have to be dealing with this. She shouldn't have to be dealing with this because the federal government holds a patent on the medicinal value of cannabis and has done so since 2001. And so for me, now we in 2021, 20 years have passed. This baby, literally to me, she a baby, was basically her whole life time period, and nothing has changed, even though the government has known. That makes no sense. There's also some really baby step moves that happen with THC on the ban list. And I think this is what makes it a step backwards. It used to be that THC was on the ban list as a performance enhancer. Now, here's how crazy. We didn't even really care to talk about cannabis enough that nobody even looked at that and was like, what? Nobody even looked at it like, that's been for years and years and years. So when people are like, it's always been banned, true that, but it's not always been banned in the way that it's currently banned. It used to be that it was a very, very, very low threshold, almost like contact high type threshold, right? And and it was almost like overly punishing. It didn't matter when you were, found to be consuming. Even in the case of Michael Phelps, because the policy hadn't been changed then, he just got caught in a picture with a bong and he had his suspension, right? So they didn't even test him and he didn't even come up positive. So that was in theory harsher. A lot of people are saying, oh, he got to be in the Olympics. It was just about timing, but he had a 3-month suspension. He wasn't even offered the 1 month reduction, and they didn't have a positive test. They just saw a picture. So I don't even know what he was smoking, to be honest. But that being said, we don't. But that being said, we fast forward to now, and this year, for the first time, THC was moved to the banned substances list for substances of abuse, primarily in alignment with our federal designation. So it's aligned with heroin and the like, and it's supposed to be because it has no medicinal value, and it isn't in the best interest or light of the sport, and it is most common to be abused. Well, that's not all boom, boom, boom. Those are all not factual. It has medicinal value. It probably could be extremely helpful to the sports athletes. In fact, it is. We know it is. And it definitely isn't a drug that or a substance of abuse. And we have a lot of data around that too. These governing bodies have a responsibility and accountability to ensure that they are explaining to us how and why rules are in place. They made this change and they didn't even give any stipulations. And scientific minds want to know, where's the data? Okay, where does it show that this is a substance of abuse? And why aren't you aligning with what the federal government knows, right? They're taking billions in state taxes on cannabis, and they have a patent.
Right. And why do it in a state like Oregon too? So there's a part of me that feels like there's 50 other states you could get ready for the Olympics. You choose a adult use state, you pick that out of all the lottery, and you don't think that athletes who are seeing a medical program, right? Because they have a medical program for cannabis, they're seeing this medical program and they have access to try it as an adult use. Like, what? This girl is also not from a legal state. It's not like she grew up in that type of environment where cannabis was used as medicine.
Yes, but that doesn't mean she doesn't know it's medicine. And that gives me another point where I did have some reservations with her Today Show interview. It was very authentic to her. And we are going to support Sha'Carri Richardson no matter what. She was not the only and is not the only athlete that has tested positive. But again, other athletes have tested positive, but they're not as well known. It didn't impact their trial, right? They maybe did their suspension and they were still able to participate in a run. And so the fact that they did not select her for the two alternates that they could have picked for the relay of the 4x100, it tells me that U.S. track and field ain't really trying to win. No. And because unless you're going to call yourself the best, I'll take it from bring it. If you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. Okay. And if you're not even, competing against the best, then good luck whoever is getting the goal. Right. Because everybody's going to be looking at you with a little asterisk / side eye from here on forward. Okay. And so, yeah, they didn't select her. And that to me is the hypocrisy. I will also just say scientifically, you called out, she took an edible. These are athletes that are tested rigorously. I mean, and here's the thing, for decades, Black athletes in particular have talked about being tested at a way more higher rates than their white counterparts. So everybody gets tested. That is a fact. But do they get tested exactly the same number of times? The same? No. In fact, one of the other athletes who has the case talked about the fact that in a month period, she was tested no less than 70 times in that month. So
you can't even pee that much.
Listen, this is what I'm talking about. They're getting tested. And so my question is this. The law or the rule of the Olympic Committee is that you cannot have more than 180 nanograms per milliliter. So they increased it. So it's a higher threshold that they're saying you have to have. So definitely it shows you actually did consume cannabis. But the rule is that you can't do it in competition. And those are the words, in competition, that are really, really important here. So apparently the test and the trial that she took the same day on June 19th, that test came back positive. But leading up to that trial on June 19th, she definitely had to have THC in her system. She's claiming that she found out about her mom the week before and she had an edible as a result. I don't know anything about how she consumed it, and I don't even know if that is true. But what I do know that is it don't matter, because the minute that THC got into her system, God knows and science knows that it would take more than 5 days for it to be gone, and it would definitely be the case that if she tested on the 19th and she tested on the 16th, she probably had more THC than she did on the 19th. So to me, they let her run knowing that she already had a positive test. They did everything that they got out of it that they wanted, which was media, money. Her races were highly anticipated. And that to me suits the U.S. track and field. And then after it was all over, now we got an announcement. I feel like that's the arbitrary nature of the rules, which is why I am not a supporter of rules are rules, because if you're not unequivocally, applying them equally, then rules aren't rules. Rules are only for groups that are being impacted by how the rules are applied. Rules are tools. That is something somebody posted on my page. They're actually tools to achieve a very specific outcome. And in the case for this young lady, I think the outcome was for them to get all of the media, marketing, and money that they needed to get the day of her actual races. And they got it. They got lots of it. And then took that away from her because of the rules.
Well, for all the people like the president, rules are the rules. A couple 100 years ago, rules, Black people couldn't do anything. So was the rules then good too? Should we follow the rules then? We couldn't read. We was enslaved. Rules were rules, though, you guys.
That's why I said Harriet Tubman would have absolutely left some of these rules are rules people right on the plantation. Because if that's what you want to talk about, no problem. I'm here to give people the freedom. You could stay. And she has a quote that she freed 1,000 slaves. I would have freed 1,000 more, but they did not know they were slaves. And a lot of the Black people that are saying rules are rules, in my opinion, you don't know that you're enslaved. You are seeing it as, why couldn't she just smoke, not smoke? Even some people in the cannabis space. And that tells me you don't understand cannabis as medicine. I've been told that by doctors as well, that maybe you shouldn't use cannabis while you're trying to figure out what's going on with your autoimmune issues. And I'm like, bruh, I'm using cannabis because I have autoimmune issues. Okay. Right. And that's the part that folks aren't realizing. She not only chose the best medicine for her mental health, unexpected knowledge that her mother passed, and don't you know, we know, but she also chose the best medicine for recovery, muscle recovery, and inflammation that is the case when you are doing elite training. And it's time for us to no longer put our athletes in these situations where they have to choose between their mental health, their well-being, before they actually are able to, I guess, be successful in their athletics. It shouldn't be an either or. This to me is akin to the Naomi Osaka situation. And all it's going to do is make these really old, predominantly white male-led governing bodies like the Olympic committees and Wimbledon, what? Ain't nobody been talking about Wimbledon because ain't no Osaka, ain't no Serena. But if we're there to see the athlete and that's what brings the marketing, media, and money, and we no longer show up, then you don't got an outfit, you don't got a business, and you don't got what you need. So I would definitely encourage athletes to do what they need to do to keep their well-being intact. She did the right thing. She's not the poster child for what not to do. We need to take care of ourselves first. And then if that means that you cannot be an Olympic, by the way, which, it's a gold medal, I get it, but it ain't money. Nike's still keeping her on their roster because she's an influencer and she's always going to be a star.
Right. And I mean, ultimately, she is a star. She is an influencer. And at the end of the day, Nike's based out of Oregon. What are we even talking about right now? Like, I'm pretty sure all the people working for Nike didn't have the edible, period. Poo. Like, I don't care what you're talking about or what you think you're denying or saying. But at the end of the day, like, why is Nike based in Oregon? Why are you guys basing this in Oregon? And why are other athletes coming up positive and we're not finding out about it? You know what I'm saying? So I am feeling really disgusted with our country. And I am disgusted too because it is based on your country's rules. So people in other countries that are allowed to use cannabis are now not getting disqualified for using something. So it also calls for like everyone to understand, hey, other countries are using cannabis too. You know what I'm saying? Canada's not kicking their people off. Israel, we know they're not kicking their people off. So there's countries where people are using cannabis and absolutely are not getting penalized for it. So I don't know.
No, I completely agree. I had a lot of people talking about, well, Japan. And well, first of all, this ain't happening in Japan. Like you said, it's happening in Oregon, United of States of America, right? Like it is not happening in Japan. But also, cannabis is medicine, and the countries that believe that, they're having they got to follow the World Olympic Association, World Anti-Doping rules, but the key thing is the in competition, and so there's a bit of discretion, and it gets to be like a funnel. So you got the world, you got the United States Olympic, and then you got the actual like sports. So there's U.S. gymnastics and U.S. track and field, and those are the groups that manage the athletes. I follow both really closely. So to me, U.S. gymnastics has shown themselves to be very much a trouble spot. First of all, they had a doctor that was molesting the girls.
Tell the truth.
I mean, just being real. So there is a lot of dirty things that have happened and have been uncovered. Get your Netflix on if you don't know, because all of these got documentaries out. But it has shown that our Olympic athletes are not being taken care of. And if you are clearly understanding that cannabis is medicine, then you have choices here. You have choices before you decide that you're going to take a case about it. Again, lots of testing happening. It is not like she got tested once and they're like, oh, they messed up on timing. I know a lot of people are wanting to support her and help her. She's a good girl, but she messed up the timing. No, I think she's been consuming. I think she's been consuming. I don't know that it was just because of her mama, and I don't fault her for being consuming, because again, it's medicine. And I think that a lot of people that have been in Oregon this many months have been consuming. And to your point, other countries are also letting their athletes consume as they need. Now, once they get to Japan, you got to follow the letter of the law there, right?
Right.
So that's a whole different story. And I do agree that it's unfortunate, but their laws are that way because of our war on drugs. So we still got to take responsibility for it because the United States led that effort. And so we need to do the work to dismantle it. But until we do that, we can't tell Japan what to do, right? And so if she was there, I would have a different response. I would still feel it is not her fault. It is ours, United States government's fault. But I would definitely feel less inclined to call out the associations because, again, she's in a country where she could go to jail for it. Now, you're in a state where you cannot go to jail for it. You are working in a situation where, again, they just don't want you to use it in competition, and that's arbitrary, right? They don't care if you use it in your off time. That's what that new rule. That's why they transition it. They know it's not performance enhancing.
That in competition is like that lawyer loophole thing that always sticks people up. So it's like, cannabis builds, and you always, if you're continuously consuming it, your body's continuously storing it. And so that one time, like, she would have had to clean out a month before.
Exactly. And so I'm glad you really call that out. The test itself is biased against cannabis compared to cocaine and heroin and the list of other substances of abuse, because she could have used coke the day before. Tiny as she is, that joint would have been already done. Running as much as she is, that joint would have been already done. But that was not the case. And let's be clear, she's not using all these drugs. And I want to make sure that's clear. She used cannabis, and cannabis is medicine. And I don't even consider it a drug, but it is also medicine that stays in the body, to your point, builds over time, and someone of her size is going to build faster too. So there's a lot of physiological science that is involved there, and I feel like what they've done, similar to the testosterone level that they've just put as a blanket, they've decided, okay, we're going to use what I call pseudoscience or bro science to come up with the level and call it that, but not take into the account that it could take up to 30 days for THC to get to lower than that level that they are testing for. So it's a little bit ridiculous. She didn't use cannabis the day of the competition. Stop saying that if she ran with blunt lungs or whatever, that she should get 2 gold medals. Truth, I agree, but that's not what happened. We don't even know if she smoked it. And so we shouldn't perpetuate the stereotypes when we're trying to support her. That's my big sis talk right there, but it's true. I just don't think we should perpetuate the stereotypes.
Well, my big talk is don't watch that. Don't watch the Olympics. They don't even. It's not even a year. Like, they should have just waited 3 more years. Like, we should have just missed the Olympics 2020 and just met y'all in 4 years. So
for some people, that would be better. There's an Olympic hurdler that decided to get an abortion at the beginning of last year because she thought the Olympics would be in 2020, accidentally missed one of the many tests, and they have banned her for 5 years, effectively getting her out of this Olympics and the next. This is the shit I'm talking about, and this is what I mean. Of course, she's a Black woman. There are definitely some challenges. There's still racial biases, and these U.S. groups that oversee the specific areas, whether it's U.S. tennis, for example, U.S. Tennis Association didn't pick Naomi Osaka, which is why she represents Japan. That's our loss. All her wins should be technically United States wins, but it's not, because we, again, have these biases baked into how we select teams, how we put together these elite groups. It's BS.
This is what happens when the people are in charge are not diverse, and they all come from one race and one gender, and they can sit around, touch people without their permission, but can't create equity in their freaking policies. I don't know.
You nailed it. You do know this is unfortunately the type of country we're in. And can I just say, because I have to, and I just it's She Blaze, so this is a little bit of my therapy. But the same
Yes,
black folk who are the rules are rules people for Shakari using it to destroy her are the same black people who are using rules are rules to uplift Bill Cosby getting out of jail. And this is where I'm like, yo, bro, y'all on the wrong side of history here. Our righteous and moral call for racial justice will never, ever, ever win if we are using a poster child like Bill Cosby, who obviously has an immoral past. That's all I'm gonna say. And so the rules are rules part is just so crazy to me. If I never hear it again, there's a meme of someone starting the line, and then you see Denzel Washington slamming the door before you can hear it, before you can hear them say rules are rules.
Yeah.
Like, that's how I feel. I don't want to hear it anymore. I'm tired of schooling mostly black folk. It's been disappointing. I would say it's definitely Generation X older folks. We're talking about you delivered hip hop for folks, and you still talk about rules and rules. That's very respectful.
Fight the power.
I'm just saying, what happened to fight the power? Exactly. Fight the power.
Well, I guess well, a lot of them don't fought the power back in the day, but they got so much money they ain't trying to fall on that sword, and that's true tea.
That's so factual. So
oh. Yes, y'all. Well, we done had to read a whole bunch of people, and we about to go and read the Office of National Drug Policy next. So that'll be written so y'all can take a screenshot. But anyway, thank you guys for joining us. This has been a hot episode. Okay. And thank you, Dasheeda, for always breaking it down for us. Can you tell us about that flower for the power thing one more time for me?
Oh, yeah. So flower to the people. Okay. Like power to the people. Flower to the People is a bi-weekly segment on Sirius Urban View on the Loree Daniel Favor Show. And I'm there every other Thursday at 11:15 a.m. Eastern Time to give all the tea, give a little bit of snippet of what's happening in the cannabis space, and of course, bring flower to the people.
I know that's right. Well, we know you always got that flower though. And as always, thank you so much, and thank you guys for watching us. You can watch She Blaze anytime on YouTube. Listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're on all streaming platforms, and make sure you follow us on IG at She_Blaze. And you can always follow me, Ice Dawson, Cannabis Socialite on IG. And if you look hard enough, you can probably find my Twitter, but that is real sassy, okay?
I don't think they're ready for it, sis. We wasn't ready for it, and we know you. Oh my goodness. Well, this has been definitely a very exciting episode. I'm glad I got the sound off. I've been sounding off all week on Twitter and IG, so you should definitely follow me on both at Dasheeda Dawson. And of course, you can find all of us at theweedhead.com, because that's the WeedHead and Company, which essentially is and family. And I just have to give a shout out quickly to our Chem Coalition family as well. We've been doing some things, y'all, and I can't wait to show and those receipts in our future episodes for the season.
Yes. Well, thank you. Have a great Saturday and a great week, everybody.
Bye.